Alright everyone, now we talk about Brazil because there's a first general strike in I think 20 years there going on right now as what appears to be happening is that groups of liberals and socialists are not happy with the idea of losing a bunch of guaranteed pensions and so forth. Brazil is undergoing austerity. Now I spoke out quite some time ago when these proposals were first made, wake of Dilma getting kicked to the curb, and said the austerity is all well and good, it will piss people off. They should ultimately go further. They should try to form like a libertarian republic or something. They'd be a massive investing muscle. Things would improve there. They'd become not only first world, they'd become the power of Latin America if they did so. I'm not sure they understand this. But make no mistake, when socialists and liberals rise up and start protesting in the streets because you're going to cut spending, this is an example of the slow death of socialism and leftism in general. When a leftist state is beginning to fail and move more to the right because it's no longer capable of supporting all of the top-heavy interventionism and welfare spending, you inevitably will alienate people when you're undergoing those reforms. This would be, if you were to like go into Venezuela, for example. Let's say that Maduro has a massive heart attack, drops dead. The opposition takes advantage of that and installs more of an actual, something closer to a free market. There are no free market capitalist countries in the world anymore. They simply don't exist. The closest approximation you get is like a half-free market with some interventionism, and they work way better than socialist nations, generally speaking. U.S., case in point, in the low-tax states, maybe Texas or something, somewhere where you don't have a personal income tax, you don't have all these other regulations and fees, as opposed to Vermont, which is closer to socialism. We've got a near 9% state income tax rate. It's retarded. It's why people move out of this state. Anyway, if you take a socialist system and you keep it socialist, over time more and more welfare spending emerges. Eventually it strangulates the system. If at any point, though, you attempt to reform that socialist system, which is what Brazil has had, state socialism essentially, then you alienate parts of the population that have become reliant upon socialism, specifically because that socialism has suppressed the free market, it suppressed growth, it suppressed true advancement, it suppressed private endeavors. So more and more people, the lower class especially, and into the middle class if you look at Brazil or Venezuela, those individuals have become reliant upon government handouts. This is what people here are seeking to avoid. They realize if federal bureaucracy and socialism here, socialized programs, continue, it won't work. It will strangulate the system, and if at any time you realize that it's strangulating you, the Brazilians have done it, and they need to keep up with the austerity, they need to rein in spending. Venezuela, it's like too far gone. They need a full revolutionary overthrow in order to make it work. When you attempt to return to something that more closely approximates a free market economy in order to cause growth, in order to cause actual wealth to develop, in order to become more competitive, so you can have a system that long-term will actually work and won't collapse every decade or so, then you get hordes of people who, through no fault of their own, largely, have become reliant upon those government programs. They will protest, they will burn things, they'll riot if they feel it necessary. And I'm not entirely unsympathetic towards these people. I realize that these are leftists that are protesting and striking here. But because of the thing is, they're right about the symptom. The symptom is, well, I'm losing my pension, I'm losing this piece of health coverage, I'm losing this food handout or something. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do? The symptom, yeah, they get it totally right. They just don't understand the cause. The cause was the leftism itself making you reliant. You wouldn't have been reliant, generally, on many of those programs and bureaucratic institutions if you hadn't been socialist to begin with. That's how socialism grows itself, strangles itself, and goes into a death spiral. Thankfully for the Brazilian people, things may look a bit bleak right now because of the general strike, because of the problems there. Don't take it out on your fellow citizens, though. They've been misled into thinking that the government is a guarantor of prosperity. It never has, and it never will be. No government will ever be a guarantor of prosperity. Never happened in the history of the world, never will. When you have top-heavy systems of governance, whether they're elected or whether they're appointed or whether they're born into some monarchic lineage, they always inevitably over time strangulate themselves. But it's not their fault. Yeah, they voted for, far-left parties. What do you expect them to do? They were made reliant by the first wave of socialism that existed there. And this is always how it starts. Oh, a little bit of socialism won't corrupt the state. Yeah, and then you get that little bit of socialism. The private markets get depressed a little bit. More people are now needing those social programs. So then you say, oh, a little bit more socialism for this other group of people won't be a problem. Look at the war on poverty here in the United States. War on poverty begins, poverty increases. And only lately has begun to stabilize and sort of decline because we made that transformation. The problem is it's not a long-term solution. It means perpetually higher taxes. It means perpetually more unemployment. It means perpetually lower wages. It means perpetually, the only way to lower prices is to globalize and offshore a bunch of shit. And then the nation strangulates itself further. We need our own overthrow of socialism here in the United States. I'm not saying, oh, abolish, public education. I'm not a privatize everything libertarian. What I would suggest, though, is that there are ways to at least somewhat reduce the tax burden. There are ways to drive down costs other than globalization. There are ways to increase wages. There are ways that industry can coexist with, the common good, so-called, which often, when governments allude to it, has nothing to do with the common good. In the case of Brazil, though, this is a pang that they're going to have to go through to reform their system into something that is a more free market. There is no other option. People have become despondent because they've become used to those socialized programs. Weaning them off of them is going to take time, it's going to take effort, and because this is Latin America, which is socialist central in the world anyway, it's going to take at least some risk that you get overthrown by the socialists and the whole process repeats itself over again. It's like weaning yourself off a heroin addiction. Yes, it's possible Brazil relapses during the recovery process. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully it doesn't. Socialism will never work long term. It can appear to work for some decades, maybe a century, then it collapses in on itself. Inevitably. Because government tends to grow anyway. When you adopt a socialist model, it enables it to grow much more quickly. It enables it to grow in manifold ways that a more free market would not allow. And so it strangles itself, inevitably. It will always happen. There will always be other states competing that won't have the high business tax rate, that won't have the high personal income tax rate. Why do you think so many Europeans are just saying fuck it and leaving Europe? Why do you think that happens? Why do you think here in the U.S. people leave more socialist-friendly states like here in Vermont, and they go to the Mid-Atlantic, they go to Texas or something like that, maybe they go to Wyoming? Why do you think they do that? It's because people who are more productive, they don't want to live under such a system. It's much more difficult when the whole nation has transferred into socialism. That's the risk here. We should have an extremely libertarian, conservative, very free market federal government. If a state wants to adopt a socialist model, tax its population, pay for social programs at the state level, so be it. People can easily leave the state. When the federal government does it, it's a little bit different. That would be my thought. The state wants to, like Vermont. Vermont wants to be a socialist state. That's why we keep electing idiot Bernie Sanders. Okay, that's fine. People like me will leave. And I'm actively planning to leave the state of Vermont for that reason. I'm not going to pay 9% of my income to the state of Vermont for dilapidated socialist roads. Five dudes are there. 4 of them are standing around drinking Budweiser while one of them very slowly and inefficiently works. For roads that don't even get plowed, properly sometimes in the winter. If we're a state with a climate where 4 months out of the year the weather is good, I'm not going to pay 9% of my income for that. It's just not going to happen. The common good, my ass. There are ways that they could shrink the tax rate in this state, just as there are ways they could cut spending in a place like Brazil. Austerity is a good thing for Brazil. It's necessary. Brazil can't compete if it continues the slow death march into more and more socialism. It will strangle itself. These people that are striking, I understand their concerns, but you've got to realize 10, 20 years down the road, things would be a lot worse than some austerity measures. Those may hurt. Yeah, they will. Some people in your nation will fall through the cracks. There is no other way to solve the problem. 20 years from now, all of you will fall through the cracks if you keep on doing what you're currently doing. It doesn't work. Socialism can't work. It's impossible. It just grows and grows. It's like a tumor. It's like a slow motion disaster. That's just the way that things operate in the world. Even a little bit of interventionism slowly becomes larger and strangles itself. We see this all the time with moral laws too. With the intelligence agencies, it's the same concept. Requires more money. Well, there's your root of socialism right there. Oh, we need the military to be larger. Well, how do you think you pay for that? What possible way could be used to pay for a larger, more sophisticated military? Oh, that's right, tax money. Yeah, your money, my money, things like that. It's not going to happen. That's what socialism does. So I wish the people of Brazil well, but yeah, there's going to be pain one way or the other. Doesn't matter. If the general strike, let's say it drags on, the economy begins to grind down, and people start not just protesting, but rioting in the streets, and they overthrow the government or something, install another fucking Dilma. Well, then you're back to square one. 10, 20 years from now, the same thing might happen all over again. And the Brazilian government, even the conservatives there, they are corrupt. It's just like Macedonia, which I'm going to weigh in on. It's not like the right wing is perfect in these states. It's not like it's a fully functioning democratic representative system. It's sort of like Venezuela now, isn't it? Oh yeah, we have elections. We just happen to ignore the outcome. And then people go to parliament or a legislative body and they beat each other and stuff like that. They throw rocks at each other and they get rocks thrown at them by passers-by. That's about all. Peace out.